What is up, everybody? It's your boy Matsu here, and today I'm bringing you a set 4 tier list, which is going to be my opinions on what will be good going into the Kansas City Regional that we have coming up on Memorial Day weekend, which I believe is the 29th. And I'm just going to be doing some speculation on what I believe will be some of the best decks or some of the most competitive decks for the Kansas City Regional. Without further ado, let's get into it. Make sure you guys go check out my Patreon, where I do coaching, all that kind of stuff. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and check out PPE. So, first deck, think one of the best characters. No one should be surprised by this. We have Eraserhead, and this is in no particular order, by the way. Shutting off your opponent's character will never not be good, right? Like, even in your worst matchups, let's say like Jiro or something along those lines, shutting off their face to let them not scry 2 is fine. It's not great, obviously, but like even in your worst matchups, it is still serviceable. And discard a card for -2 speed, add a breaker 1 mid block from your discard to your pile to your hand is also always good. Like, all of his abilities are just never bad, right? Like, tap your face, draw 2, not bad. Discard a card from -2 or +2, pick up breaker 1 mid block. That's also a functional seal. Like, that will never be bad. All Might 3, another example, generic character. His abilities will never be bad. Tap, tap, draw 2, amazing. Generic speed based on how many cards your opponent has in hand. Just good abilities. Also, the punch lineup is just absurd on both the good and the all symbol. On the all symbol, you get to play the All Might's Mentorship Hardened Barrage loop with like a Ward the Victor and stuff, because you draw cards and you give stats on face. And then kind of the elephant in the room, All Might 4. This deck, in my personal opinion, is probably one of the most toxic, if not the most toxic deck in the format. It just does things in a way that just breaks the game in half. It says, if you ever build more than 2 against me, like you try to play the game and play a real game with me, I'm not going to play a real game with you. I'm going to respond with cremation, and then I'm going to kill you on my turn 2 if I went first. Or if I went second, I'll live a turn because I have 27 health, and then I'll one-shot you on the backswing. If you try to aggress on me at all and you don't build your answers, or build a wide board to be able to block this, then you'll just die. And even if you do have the answers, they play a million different answers to your answers. So that's why, in my opinion, honestly, this is an extremely toxic, mean-spirited deck that could very well win an event. It's an absurd deck, right? When you think about the game in the context of itself, you don't think, oh, I'm dying on turn 2 to a 12 mid for 36, right? That just should not happen. So hopefully Jasco looks at it and fixes it at some point. If not before the RLE, maybe after, I don't know. Momo, she's just one of the best generic defensive characters in the format. She's not super locked into playing a bunch of weapon cards. You have the availability to go with the punchline that are good if you want to. Just generic value stuff. It's very cool. Under the life symbol, you can just play the best value possible, right? Like, all 3 of her symbols just get to play generic value stuff and be very okay with it. Because, yet again, get rid of a resource for +2 or -2 speed, very generic ability, very strong. Especially when it can replace itself, or the resource can replace itself, essentially, right? Ochako 2. I don't think anyone is surprised by this. The gremlin poster child, she just does what she wants. She doesn't really care about what you're doing, per se, except for the one that kills her, right? So, like, even in the, like, All Might 4 matchup, you can kill him before he gets online. And then you also have the -3 speed on your face, which isn't something he can really interact with profitably to say, oh, I maybe get a block your move, right? I built 4, it's only a 9 mid, I can tap my face to give it -3 and then block with like a 1 or a 2 mid block and call it good. Jiro. This is, in my opinion, the second major elephant in the room. I'm sure most of you by now have read the card The Future Is Now and realized the absurd synergy that it has with Jiro as a character. If you haven't, well, now you know. So Staff Strike Jiro, I think, is going to be one of the best decks, if not the best deck in the room. If you can figure out a way to consistently beat All Might 4 and make sure that he doesn't kill you on turn 2, I don't think there is a single other deck in the format that could have a relative chance of standing up to you, if I'm being brutally honest. Because her high rolls, and even arguably her mid rolls, just murder people. When a cannon comes in as their second move with base +7/+7 on it, you die. That's just how it is. You can't block those on turn 2. So you have to hope they check bad, and then that's like another can of worms in and of itself, because at the point where you're just hoping for your opponent to check bad, then it's not coming down to skill by either player, it's just, oh, my opponent checked bad, and I won because of it. Like, that doesn't feel good for either player, right? So yeah, I think this is one of, if not the second most toxic deck in the format. Or it has the potential to be. Obviously, this is speculation based on my own testing, my own experiences, talking to members of the community, stuff like that. Last deck in S tier, Recovery Girl. This is a little bit biased. I think that she is probably the second, maybe the third best defensive deck in the format. She does a lot of like crazy loop things with her foundations. Blood Transfer was a huge pickup in set 4 for her. And then she also, if she wants to, gets the Toga attack in the new reunion boxes, which is pretty good for her. It allows her to target snipe something if she's dealt, I believe, 4 more damage this turn, which is pretty easy to do. You just have to get a move to 7 and then make it a throw, right? So yeah, that's really cool. Anyways, on to A tier. So these are the decks that, they're awesome decks, amazing. They absolutely could top in a bit. The only thing that they're being gatekept by essentially is the decks in S tier, right? Because if you look at it, like Asui, how does Asui ever beat Recovery Girl, right? You're playing a bunch of, like a million attacks that are like not very big, but pretty fast, and Recovery Girl just kind of eats that alive. Eraserhead shuts off your face. All Might 4 can just kill you without caring about what you're doing. Ochako can do the same thing. Jiro can do the same thing. Momo can defend against your strings. So on and so forth. Midnight, I think, is a good possible side for Eraserhead, maybe. So she could be in sideboard tier, but I think that she is also just a good character in her own right on all 3 symbols. Maybe less so on Void, but All and Chaos definitely have not only put up results, but they have shown that they are good enough to compete. So that's why Midnight's there. So All Might 1 essentially can do the same thing that All Might 4 can do, but in like, not more consistent, obviously, because All Might 4 is a 7-hander, so he sees a few more cards, but in a way that doesn't necessarily just like hard lose to a character like Eraserhead, right? Because All Might drawing 3 every single turn keeps you that tempo advantage, and you aren't on a timer that says, if this game goes super long, I'll start dying to a single poke. Like, any poke you throw out will just kill me, like, in the way that All Might 4 does, right? And you just kind of get a little bit more longevity in that, and you can also play a bit more of a real game, per se, which I guess is kind of disingenuous to say, right? But being able to play the he's arguably one of the better characters to play the All Might's mentorship award the victor like stuff, because you basically just say, hey, do you have a high block? And if they ever don't have a high block, not only can you just do the combo, but you can also just all in them. Like on the after the first loop, you can form after stacking to draw, even if you don't have the mentorship, which is another thing. He can do the award the victor stuff without having the mentorship in your card pool once, right? So I think he's pretty good. Deku 2. This guy can just blow people out of the water, and also his wall game is really good. I think he's one of, if not the best Earth character post Ojiro hits, because Ojiro got hit very hard. I don't think he's unplayable, right? I think that if someone finds the way to make up for the amount of damage that he has to lose, or that he lost by the nerf, and gets rid of the utility attacks and just goes all in on this, I'm going to kill you with all these massively statted attacks, I think they could get there. But we'll have to wait and see. All Might 4. Or not All Might 4. I believe this is All Might 2. Yeah, All Might 2. He got top 16 at Florida. This is a character that I thought of has had legs for a long time. He gets to draw cards, he gets free stats, and milling to get stats is often not even a cost, it's more actually a benefit due to the amount of things that care about either touching your discard pile or being in your discard pile, the amount of stuff that you can do to mess with your discard pile. So like, under all three of his symbols, I think he has a lot of competitive viability, just with the massive amount of stats that he brings on all of them. Shigaraki 3. This guy is going to be very good, especially with Masterminding come out in the new reunion boxes. Him being able to form on his turn 1 going second, if you fail a check, is actually very strong, because it means that your follow-up turn is a lot worse, and then he always has the possibility of all-inning you on his turn 2 to turn 3, right? Because he, as much as I want this character to be a control character, which maybe someone discovers something that we didn't already know about this character after the reunion box's release, but he's an aggro character. He wants to get in there. He wants to kill you. He wants to just play a million attacks that clear themselves and get him momentum and draw him cards and do all that kind of crazy stuff. Even if he doesn't give stats on his face necessarily, aside from the +1 speed that he gives with his once per game. Fourth kind. He's fourth kind. He's just kind of one of the most generic characters that you can like ask for on the order symbol. He's not tied into anything particularly. He gets to play the kick lineup very well. He puts 4 damage on Excel Kick and makes it free, which means you can just clear your card pool and keep going. His once per game to tap for is obscenely strong. There's just not much else to say. And he has a lot of health, enough health that maybe if you play against All Might 4 and he doesn't have like the actual nuts, like he doesn't have the sugar rush, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, he doesn't kill you from full necessarily. This is Deku 3. Deku 3 is another contender for possible best Earth character. He gets to put Stun 2 or Breaker 2 on his first kick or punch every turn, which is just a very strong ability, like both offensively and defensively, especially with stuff like Back Alley Haymaker existing. Just overload your opponent with stun. Heroic Strike is another important one. You just go Back Alley into Heroic Strike, you stun your opponent for 6, and you haven't even really started playing. He also gets to do cool stuff with Pull No Punches, putting punches into your momentum, and then Celebrity Status to draw them, or to stack them back on top of your deck, and then you can draw them with his once per game, which is also a very cool synergy. And just spammable +1 damage, +2 damage, +3 damage. Scaling damage is not bad. So yet again, just another generic character. Innsmouth. Innsmouth just clogs your pool, taps down whatever your best answer is. He has an absurd synergy with Tongue Whip, very good with Creepy Realization, and just gives a lot of damage. His moves get really big, so as long as he has ways to draw cards, he will keep going and he will find the lethal line, especially if you maybe decide, oh, I'm going to be a little bit more greedy, I'm going to hold some more cards to try and kill them on the next turn, and you don't block like his opening moves, or you don't block the moves that matter, then you will just find yourself in a horrible situation very quickly. Sato 1. Sato 1 got a lot with this set. He can play Final Smash, he can play the Todoroki Fortif, that's like the backup page card that says if you've stunned, it gets 2 speed, and then you can freeze a foundation, which is just absurd in him. It's just an amazing poke. It's a 4 low for 4, or 4 low for 5 that freezes whatever the foundation they commit to the sun, and maybe gets in there for a little extra poke, and is very good in combination with stuff like Electric Drill. So next character, Toga. Toga is just Toga. She gains life, she gives speed, she burns them, she draws cards. She's like a 9-hander essentially, but it's the extra 2 hand size is just filtering. And then every extra Excited for Blood is just bonus hand size on top of that. Yeah, not much else to be said. You can probably play this character with some relative success on 2/3 symbols, death and life, and then evil is kind of sus. Toru 1. So I'm sure you're probably interested behind my train of thought behind this one. This is just really good into almost all of the S tier characters, right? You play against Ochako 2, you flash her big move that she's trying to touch you with, her stun 2 move, whatever, give it -2 speed, make sure it doesn't deal damage so it can't come back to their hand. Against Jiro, you flash her Staff Strike. Against Recovery Girl, you flash the Funny Punch or the Back Alley. Against Momo, you probably flash the Back Alley or the Cannon. Against All Might 4, you flash Detroit Smash and he can't play the game anymore. Against All Might 3, you just flash whatever attack feels the best. Against Eraser, you just flash whatever feels the best. Yeah, like flashing and -2 speed is an extremely strong ability, especially in the context of almost like all of the decks in this format feel like they are kind of hinging on one big attack to just wipe the floor with you. So if you can stop them from wiping the floor with you, it doesn't particularly matter if your offense isn't particularly amazing, which hers is fine. You just kind of do water defense stuff, and then eventually you'll kill them with a combination of like Cannon, Tongue Whip, Amphibious Ambush, that kind of stuff. Just generic value stuff. Tokiyami 1. I don't think anyone is really surprised by this. Maybe you're surprised why he is not in S tier, but he just kind of dies to too much, in my opinion. So, like, against the degenerate decks, like, All Might 4, like Ochako 2, like Jiro, if you lose the die roll, it's just kind of doomed, because your defensive techs aren't necessarily there to deal with those characters. And so, for that reason, I think he is firmly okay in just being an awesome deck that can definitely top an event, and you would not be surprised if he did. Alright. On to the B tier. B tier, there's a lot less to explain here. These are characters that are just like barely out of the running due to either they don't interact well with the rest of the top tier characters favorably, they don't, like, they're just kind of lacking somewhere. So for this, I'm not going to go super in depth. It's just, as you can see, Kirishima 2, Endeavor 2, Todoroki 1, Dabi 2, and I guess I can kind of go a little deeper. So Kirishima 2 is just, he got a lot weaker after his nerfs, obviously. He wouldn't have been nerfed if he wasn't supposed to get weaker. Endeavor doesn't necessarily, like, he's good, but he doesn't have quite the amount of defense that should get you there, in my personal opinion, against a deck like Jiro or Ochako or All Might 4, right? Because, like, sure, cut for 2 for -4 speed, that'll let you live a Detroit Smash, but if you don't have exactly the offense to put him to 0 on the next turn, then he'll just do it again, right? Because he can Final Smash to stack, do all that kind of stuff. Todoroki 1, amazing sideboard character, which he could be in sideboard. And honestly, he's kind of in the same vein as like Toru. He's very good against these, against All Might. Like, he's good against Jiro. He's good against Ochako. Sorry, stuff like that. Just basically the degenerate decks that kind of rely on like one thing to get them going. Dabi, he's a little too high roll. He has to draw the gas to get there, and if he doesn't, he's just a squishy 7-hander with no innate defense, and on some of the symbols with the worst, like, theoretical defense, right? Like, All and Fire don't really have amazing, like, defense, nothing really to write home about. Chaos has a lot more, but even then, you are still prone to dying to things that just, like, come out of nowhere, right? Especially if you don't draw your outs. Mineta 2, I think that Mineta 2 has a pretty terrible time into Jiro, Momo, and All Might 4 because they don't really care about debuilding, right? Like, they don't care if they have a card in their card pool. Like, against Jiro and Momo, it's like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll add a weapon up. You just gave me more fuel for my staff strikes if you're playing Jiro, or you just added a weapon up for Momo and she just gives +2 or -2 and then rebuilds it. Like, oh, cool, thanks for letting me gain one. And also, a lot of decks are playing Capture Evildoers right now, and that card is absurdly strong against Mineta because it basically turns off a portion of your character unless you have multiple momentum. Momo 2. I think Momo 2 does potentially have the legs to get there. But she did get hurt a lot by the Ready Get Set Go ban because a lot of the way that she could kind of set up her wall, get her defense going, was playing a tight deck with Ready Get Set Go, and then just, oh, I'm going second. I'm a 7-hander, so I gotta see 14 cards or whatever, and I'll find the Ready Get Set Go, and then I'll play every foundation in my hand and have 10 built going into your second turn. Good luck. Stuff like that. And so she's a lot weaker by that, but she still does have some of the best defensive symbols in the game, and being able to build a foundation that is keyword gated, or has a keyword on it, I should say, or an asset, it's very good. Also being able to give your give Breaker, Stun 2, kind of like how we talked about Deku earlier. That's just a very generic strong ability. Bakugo 3. So I think this guy is kind of a dark horse. I think that if someone figures out the right builds and the right ratios for this character, he could just go and kill you on 2 better than not almost any other character, but better than a lot of other characters that are just trying to gas you out on 2. All for One, he doesn't do enough necessarily to get there against the degenerate decks, but in a fair game where both players are trying to go to, 8 or 9, 10 foundations, he has very strong abilities. Being able to add a momentum to your hand and then set it down a different momentum every turn, being able to get a momentum for free going second, all that kind of stuff. Very strong. Sorry. Kurogiri 2. Yet again, another example of a character that's maybe just a little too slow, but in a world where you're trying to grind out, very, very, very strong, can do a lot. Spitter, kind of the same thing. Honestly, you could apply the things that I've said for like the past 2 or so characters for every character in this tier list. They're maybe just a little too fair. Like, all of these characters just kind of do things that are a little too fair. So, like, if we look, for example, at like Kurogiri 1, he's just a little too fair. His offense isn't strong enough to murder face someone if they whiff their kill on 2. So it's not good enough. Now, there are some things in here that you might kind of disagree with due to results or so on or so forth. Characters such as Death Arms. I think Death Arms was very good into characters like Ojiro, who needed a foundation to kind of get going or to do their thing if they didn't natural the zones. And he was also very synergistic with Ready Get Set Go, which is a card that just is not existent anymore. So I think he got a little bit worse, and it's just kind of a perfect storm to bring him down to B tier, which is fine. And then for the rest of these guys, all maybe a little too fair. I think a few things I would keep on the watch list though. Mandalay, very, very strong with the Future Is Now. She might be the second best Future Is Now deck next to Jiro. So if we see some Jiro hits, we might see some people transition into playing a Mandalay Shell because it is a little bit more safe, right? When you do the whole Future Is Now, Foundation, Weapon, Foundation, Staff Strike, it's on a 4, not a 6. So even if you check that, it's like you didn't check that at all. And then, yeah, on to C tier, which is, these are your casual characters, stuff you could take to locals and kind of expect to do okay with as long as your locals aren't playing like these guys or these guys. Not really going to go too in-depth on my logic here. You can just kind of look and see. These are characters that have problems like the characters above, but to a more deep level, right? So like, if we look at a character like, let's say, for example, Aoyama 1. He's very good with the Earth Punch lineup. He can kind of do this, like, things in the same vein as Ojiro if he sees multiple copies of Tight-Lipped, yada, yada, yada. A character like Mei, she's too slow. She's relying on too many pieces, doesn't give enough stats. All that kind of stuff lines up. A character like Kaminari 2, too slow, little too gated, doesn't have access to enough to push him out there. And that goes for a lot of the characters in this tier. On to the next tier. This is the tier for, dear God, why would you pick to play this? Now, I'm not saying, obviously this isn't an insult to anyone who maybe one of these are your favorite character, or you just really enjoy the way they play. If that's what you like, then obviously go for it. I'm not going to try and discourage you from playing whatever you enjoy playing the most. I will say that these characters, I would be shocked if they ever did anything competitively. And that's what we're looking at here. We are looking at a competitive, or a tier list from a competitive standpoint. So all of these characters have the problems that the C tier characters have, except they are much, much, much more obvious. A character like Aoyama 2 just does not do enough. He's a little too gimmicky. Tokuyami 2, too gimmicky. Most of these characters are kind of like gimmick characters, and that's fine. All of these gimmicks are somewhat cool and interesting, but they're just not quite good enough to compete. And then onto the sideboard tier. These I can kind of extrapolate on a little more. So Nomu, extremely, extremely good into this character, and kind of this character, depending. And like, just characters that are like, yes, I'm just gonna murder face you on 2 and not care about what you're actually doing. He says, stop that. And sometimes that's all it takes. So having him in your sideboard for your death, evil, earth character, it's just not a bad idea. Deku 2, or Deku 1, I should say. This one is kind of wholly dependent on, like, whether Ojiro, people can see Ojiro is still good enough to see play and be a top meta contender. In my opinion, I don't think he will be. And I think this character is also just fine if you're playing a character or if you're playing a deck that says, I need to be able to kill them on 2, and my main deck doesn't necessarily have enough gas to do so. He says, I will have the gas. My plus 10 damage says if they disrespect me, they will die. Right? So next 2, we have Eraserhead 2. So this guy being able to shut off the powerful on Detroit Smash, the add from hand to momentum on Detroit Smash, very good. Being able to shut off the Staff Strike enhance to combo, very, very good. So good against those decks. Pretty okay into the rest of the field, in my personal opinion. So I think he's a good sideboard if your deck is on all Void or Water, and is relatively synergistic with what he's trying to do, which is pretty generic. Last character in the sideboard tier, Momo. So this character is very good into certain matchups that aren't like too focused on doing one thing. So like, let's say you're playing against Recovery Girl, for example. You're like, oh yeah, I'll touch you with the throw, and then I become you, but better. It's sick. And now you just get to kind of do all of those things. You play against All Might 3, you get to touch him, and then I'm you, but better. As long as you don't play against this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. This one is even a good matchup as well. Being able to touch them and then say, hey, I have your abilities, but I'm better, is very good. And then, like, a lot of the characters in this list as well, like, just, you have a lot of good copy targets, or at the very least, okay copy targets. So that's why, in my opinion, I don't think he's a good mainboard character, but he is a fantastic sideboard. And then some other things that you could potentially add into the sideboard tier would be Hagakure and Todoroki, just because there are some decks that carry better offense as a water character. So, for example, like Kamui Woods has better offense than these guys do. But these guys have better matchups into the decks that just say, I'm going to kill you and I don't care what you're doing. There's nothing on your board that stops me, so on and so forth. These guys are much better into that. And you could also kind of say the same for Kurogiri. If you're just trying to live, these guys are there for you. Anyways, thanks everyone for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. And kind of my thoughts on what we're going to see going into Kansas City. I didn't go super deep on the lower tiered characters. I just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on the things that you should expect and be prepared for going into it, right? And so I hope now that everyone knows about, or hopefully everyone knows and is aware of this deck and just honestly a lot of the decks in like this tier, maybe Jasco kind of looks at them, right? And then maybe we can get a healthier format where all of these guys get to do their things. Because I think at the end of the day, we won a game where most characters are able to compete. Not necessarily like these guys down here are suddenly S tier, right? But a world where I could play a character like MHACCG, who is, as of right now, way too slow, and expect to reasonably live to turn 4, stuff like that. Let me know if you agree, disagree, down in the comments below. Like I said, go check out my Patreon, where I do coaching at the $10 level, once per month, your choice. And check out the Twitch, check out PPG, all that kind of stuff. Thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. This has been Matsu, signing out. Have a wonderful day.
What is up, Matsu Nation? Thank you for watching till the end of the video. If you enjoyed, like, comment, and subscribe. And check out all my socials and my Patreon. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and sayonara.